Tonight on To The Point, filing for bankruptcy. The Diocese of Sacramento says this is the best way left as they face hundreds of lawsuits alleging sexual abuse. How survivors are responding to the news. Plus new details in a deadly plane crash in Tahoe over the weekend. What we're learning about the couple on board. The new fast food wages law goes into effect. Why your wallet could soon feel the burden of the minimum wage change. And the future of California's water. Tonight, the ABC 10 weather team investigates the state's complicated and outdated water rights.
The system has not been, I think, kept up to the complexities that we face in this kind of modern era.
Good evening. Thank you so much for starting your week with us on To The Point. I'm Alex Bell. The Catholic Diocese of Sacramento filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy today in federal court, and that's in the wake of more than 250 lawsuits alleging sexual abuse by priests and other church leaders in recent decades. Becca Habegger spoke with an abuse survivor and shows us what today's bankruptcy filing means for the church.
This Easter was so intensely personal.
Dorothy Small has reminders of her faith decorating her woodland living room.
I love the beauty of the celebration, the beauty of the Mass.
It's taken years, but Small now feels comfortable returning to the Catholic Church, albeit a different one from where she experienced abuse.
Then came that priest, and I sensed that something wasn't right, so I was discerning correctly.
Small was an adult when her abuse happened. She says a priest groomed, manipulated, and sexually abused her from 2014 to 2016. She eventually sued the Diocese of Sacramento and won a $200,000 settlement.
There's no dollar amount that is going to make up for the loss.
Small is now the Sacramento area volunteer leader with SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. It's a group that advocates for survivors and works to hold abusers and the Catholic Church accountable. In 2019, California lawmakers passed a bill that lifted the statute of limitations for 3 years on child sexual abuse lawsuits. By the end of 2022, when that 3-year window closed, survivors had filed more than 250 claims against the Diocese of Sacramento. In a statement, Bishop Jaime Soto said, "It is the sickening sin of sexual abuse and the failure of church leadership to address it appropriately that brought us to this place. I must atone for these sins." He announced in December the diocese planned on filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and on Monday it did. He says there are many victim survivors who have long suffered from the reprehensible sins committed against them. This reorganization process will allow me to respond to them as equitably as possible.
SNAP believes that there is another option.
Small says SNAP worries the diocese declaring bankruptcy means survivors won't get as much money.
For years, they've lived with the pain. It also has jeopardized economic security, inability to earn income. There's mental, spiritual, and physical consequences of childhood sexual abuse and assault, which is turbocharged when it happens in a spiritual religious institution.
And we asked the diocese for an interview today. They said that the bishop wasn't available, and they did point us to a statement on their website instead, which states that the bankruptcy process could take 2 to 3 years. As far as Catholic schools, they say that parishes and high schools are distinct financial and legal entities from the diocese itself and will likely not be affected, though it all depends on how the federal judge eventually rules. Tonight, we're learning more about the couple killed in a plane crash in Truckee over the weekend. Lerone and Naomi Petrushka have been identified by their colleague at UpWest, which is an investment firm that funds and fast tracks Israeli entrepreneurs in America. And he says that the couple leaves behind 3 amazing boys.
They left their imprint on everyone they met. They're really amazing parents, amazing colleagues, and really everyone that they touched is completely heartbroken.
The plane crash happened just before 7 Saturday night near Glenshire Drive and Olympic Boulevard. Fire officials say the plane crashed into the railroad tracks and debris is still being removed. The NTSB is investigating the crash. Tonight, cleanup is underway after several rail cars derailed at Union Pacific's Roseville Yard, and it happened around 6:30 on Sunday evening. It's still not clear what caused the cars to derail, and we're told that thankfully no one was hurt and none of the rail cars' contents were released. And then take a look at this. Drivers crept along a scenic stretch of California's iconic Highway 1 after a giant piece of it fell into the ocean. And Caltrans says this was caused by heavy rain over the weekend, and as many as 1,600 people were trapped in Big Sur on Saturday. And at this hour, 1 lane of the highway is open for traffic. Most fast food workers in California will now make at least $20 an hour after a minimum wage increase went into effect today. The big question now is, will fast food restaurants put it back on consumers by raising prices? So at a joint press conference this morning with the labor union leading for the fast food workers' rights, researchers with the Roosevelt Institute said corporations should be able to absorb the cost without increasing prices. But a UC Davis professor we spoke with said you could soon see an increase.
The best estimate is about a 5% increase in consumer prices. However, the economic research hasn't really looked at this significant increase from $16 to $20 an hour. I would say that at the outside, we may have a 10% increase in prices.
In a statement, Sarbeck says that they plan to offset the minimum wage increase by changing prices. And then McDonald's doesn't anticipate a uniform price change, but says corporate-owned and franchise locations will make modifications to their menus. In other news, the last living survivor of the USS Arizona battleship that exploded and sank during the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor has died. Lou Conter passed away in his home today in Grass Valley, and he was 102 years old. Conter was standing on the main deck of the Arizona as Japanese planes flew overhead on December 7th, 1941. The Wisconsin native later flew 200 combat missions in the Pacific during World War II and then retired in 1967 after 28 years in the Navy. Still ahead on To the Point, the ABC 10 weather team is investigating the future of California's water, why these documents are considered some of the most important in the state, yet the system for them is outdated.
We are tracking some big changes in our weather. I know we started off with these beautiful conditions for today, but look at this big blast of cold air heading back into our forecast, plus rain and snow on the way.
All right, Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods with us right now. It was a gorgeous day outside. Nice, warm, beautiful. Sun was out.
I know. If you got to go back to work on a Monday, at least there was sunshine to do it, right? We started off this week with unseasonably mild conditions, a little bit above average for this time of year. The clear skies prevailing, the showers that we saw over the Easter weekend now moving off to the east, and it's a nice little break before we get back to that cool, showery weather. Highs for today, upper 60s and almost mid-70s throughout the valley, and 60s right now throughout the foothills, 40s for this year. As far as that temperature trend, you can see how we really jumped up above average for today after seeing those really cold conditions late last week. Friday, our high only 56 degrees. Saw near average conditions yesterday. Still a little bit cooler than average, though. Our future weather headed out for tonight. We've got that sunset right around 7:30, so we still have about 45 minutes to go until we get to the more dim conditions. 68 at 7 p.m., 64 at 8. Our forecast low eventually getting into the upper 40s, pretty much right on target for this time of year. Kind of doing that weather flip-flop, though. We're warm through tomorrow, showers back by Wednesday, and our temperatures drop another 10 to 15 degrees. We're into that ridge of high pressure for tomorrow. That's going to warm us up even more so than what we saw for today. And then Wednesday's our transition day. Back to the cloud cover, the rain moving in, and the snow as well. Keep those winter clothes handy because we're going to get that big blast of cold air coming in as well. As far as our total snowfall, about 1 to 20 inches of snow expected over a 3-day period for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We'll get about 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch of rain for the valley, closer to an inch of rain for the foothills. Highs for tomorrow near 60 for the Sierra, close to 70 for the foothills, with 60s and 70s across the coast, and we'll carry that inland as well. Right around the mid to upper 70s for tomorrow afternoon. Transition day is Wednesday, and it's a big drop in temperatures headed our way, not only for the mountains, the foothills, and the coast, but for the valley, where we have a slight chance of thunderstorms Wednesday and Thursday.
All right, Monica, thank you. Next, on To the Point, the future of California's water. The ABC 10 weather team investigates what's being done to prepare for the future, starting with a deep dive into the water rights system in the state. Welcome back. All this week, the ABC 10 weather team will be joining us right here at 6:30 for their investigation called The Future of California's Water. And leading us off tonight is a deep dive into California's complicated and outdated water rights system. Brenda Minchef and the team explains.
Tens of millions of people rely on California's water. Water that's also helped to feed the world.
But the truth is, we are all one pie chart. I mean, we all have to utilize each other.
The rights for using California's water are complicated.
They used rubber cement, and over years, the labels have fallen off.
Tracking who gets what is antiquated.
The system has not been kept up to the complexities that we face in this kind of modern era.
As our climate changes, what can California do about its water?
We do not get to dip a straw in the ocean and just suck out what we want.
And what's already being done.
Water is life, right? We all need it every day. You need to keep the taps flowing no matter what.
This is the future of California's water, an ABC 10 weather investigation.
So this is where we hold the ancient dusty tomes. Essentially, in case of a fire emergency or something like that, this actually holds the original record.
The records room in the Cal EPA building contains some of the most important documents in the entire state.
Our files are organized in ascending order.
These are water rights documents, and they officially state who has the authority to take water, from where, and how much of it.
So we pulled out some of the earliest water rights that have been filed, some of their really, really old and hand-drawn maps.
About 7 million individual pieces of paper of all shapes and sizes, age, and utility are in this room.
Would you mind helping me turn this?
This South Bay map dates back to the 60s or 70s.
They took 6 or 8 maps and stitched them together to show the Alameda County Water District. This is the one we found, and we were like, wow, you guys went through a lot of effort to do this. They used rubber cement, and over years, the labels have fallen off, and now it's kind of like,
well, where does it go?
Like a puzzle piece, yeah.
But some of these older surveys and maps were drawn when folks were still traveling by horse and buggy. And as long as the water usage has not been modified, they are still valid today.
We're trying to actually reach back out to these water diverters and say, is this up to date? Is this accurate?
Because if this was the only map, you wouldn't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yet in this room, you won't find a single piece of paper dated before 1914. That's the year modern California water law went into effect. Prior to 1914, water rights in California were largely governed by a simple rule: first in time, first in right.
They didn't have to apply for a permit. They didn't have to obtain a piece of paper from the board that says, yes, you have a water right. They're just kind of there.
Eric Ekdahl is the Deputy Director of Water Rights at the State Water Resources Control Board, which is tasked with managing California's water rights.
There were water rights that started, as early as 1850, maybe even earlier. And in fact, there are some what we call Pueblo rights that go back into the 1700s. If you were there first and you applied for this water right, or you obtained this water right, or you're claiming it, you get that water before anyone else who comes after you. But there's also something called the riparian system, which is really if you have land that touches a water body, you're allowed to also use that water, and you have to try and balance those two competing systems with each other.
Of the roughly 40,000 water rights and claims in the state of California, about 18,000, or roughly 30% of water use in the state, are pre-1914 or riparian. Efforts are underway right now to digitize water rights records to ultimately help the environment and hold water rights violators accountable.
We're trying to be more adaptive in our management of the water in California so that we can get more out of it. To do that, there needs to be a real-time understanding of who's using what.
Yvonne West is the director of the Office of Enforcement at the State Water Resources Control Board.
There's a large number of rights in California that are claimed rights that have yet to be examined, reviewed, or validated through any sort of formal process.
And when it comes to investigations, the Water Board has limited options to enforce state water laws. In 2022, during a drought emergency, a group of ranchers in Siskiyou County turned on their pumps and took water off the struggling Shasta River for 8 days. According to the State Water Board, it was so significant that the stream flow dropped by more than half and threatened the long-term health of the Shasta River and its ecosystem. The ranchers were told to stop and fined $500 a day, but it was cheaper for them to keep the pumps on than pay to have water trucked in. Their penalty totaled just $4,000.
it's really hard to use those emergency powers in the way that they're needed.
Marquise King Mason, with the environmental advocacy organization California Environmental Voters, is one of the people working behind the scenes on water rights.
If it's for agricultural usage, right, like they could be getting tens of thousands of dollars from that, but they only had to pay a small amount for like what was some unrepairable harm to that waterway. And so the water board can't, they can say like, stop doing this, but it takes weeks for that. It has to go through a court and has to like actually be implemented. And so the system has not been, I think, kept up to the complexities that we face in this kind of modern era.
Well, this is precisely why we need to give more tools to the water board to manage the system.
California State Senator Ben Allen is one of the many people in this state working on the future of water. He sits on the state Senate's Natural Resources and Water Committee working on water rights.
One of the things we have to do is figure out how to handle a very different environment here. Even the people who are most vested in the status quo understand that the status quo is not sustainable.
Senator Allen, along with state representatives Buffy Wicks and Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, California Environmental Voters, and others, are pushing for new legislation that empowers the water board to make quicker, more decisive action, especially in times of drought.
When we have periods of water emergency, they will have the ability to come in and fix the situation more decisively. One of the questions we have to ask ourselves going forward is how do we give the water board the tools it needs to ensure that we've got enough water for everybody, while also respecting existing water rights so that everybody can continue to grow. And that's the challenge here.
But some people, even within Senator Allen's own party, do not agree on a solution. It's a challenge made even more difficult by climate change.
We're seeing what we call weather whiplash, from dry to wet, and the dries are drier and hotter and kind of more severe. So responding to that and doing it quickly is pretty challenging.
And Brendan joins us right now. Brendan, we know the next part of this process is digitizing all of those records. Can you give us some insight onto how that will work and also the benefits of it too?
Yeah, well, it's important because right now, as you saw in the video, a lot of those rights are physical pieces of paper in a folder in essentially an office space. And, there's sprinkler systems in that room. It's not fireproofed. If anything bad were to happen, those rights could be destroyed, and those rights prop up our trillion-dollar economy, right, that we have here in the state of California. So digitizing is important for that reason, the security of the water rights, but also access to them. Right now, anyone could go down and look at water rights, but it would be a lot easier if you could go to a website and pull up that data. But it's an involved process. Like we said in the package, there's 7 million individual pieces of paper that need to be digitized, and not all of them are your standard 8x11s. So there's different ways that you got to do it. You can see the map scanner right there. That's for bigger pieces, but some pieces are damaged or have torn corners or difficult to read. So they're also trying to repair the documents that need repairing and not just scan them broken or torn and say, well, that's the way it is. They're really making an effort here to make these water rights accessible as well as secure.
And we're talking about millions of pieces of paper
7
here.
million.
How long is this going to take?
Yeah, well, the official timeline is 10 to 20 years. I will say there's hope, and there is the expectation that will be a lot less than 20 years. But they wouldn't give me an official time frame. But
they're working on it.
The hope is that it will be less than 10 to 20 years.
All right, Brendan, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And make sure you join us tomorrow night for part 2 of this series. We have Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods, who shows us who has some of the most senior water rights, what it means for our food, and access to water for people in rural areas. Next, on To The Point, why Google is purging billions of records, plus your information could be at risk following an AT&T data breach. And your price points tonight, Google has agreed to purge billions of records containing personal information collected from more than 136 million people. And it's part of a class action lawsuit accusing Google of misleading users about how Chrome tracked the activity of anyone who used the private incognito browsing option. And the agreement doesn't include damages for individual users, but the settlement will allow individuals to file claims. And AT&T says more than 72 million customers were involved in a data breach. The company says the information is from 2019 or earlier, and it includes names and social security numbers. AT&T says 90% of the leaked data belongs to former account holders, and the company says it's contacted everyone affected and reset the passcodes of 7.6 million current customers. And then UPS will become the primary air cargo provider for the United States Postal Service. So USPS's current air cargo contract with FedEx Corp is set to expire in late September. The new contract with UPS is expected to last a minimum of 5.5 years. And that is our show tonight. Thank you so much for watching and for inviting us into your home. We love telling your stories. We love getting to meet you. So if there's something you think we should be looking into, make sure you reach out to me and the team. Remember, strangers are people we just haven't gotten to know yet. So take the time to get to know someone. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, it's Alex. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. The To The Point team and I love hearing from you, and I hope that you'll stay in touch. And don't forget, you can always email me and the team at tothepoint@abc10.com, or you can even send us a text message at 916-321-3310.